I want to say a heartfelt thank you to President Ryan, the class trustees, and especially a heartfelt thank you to all of you, the class of 2025. Give it up for yourselves. But I'm going to be honest, when I was asked to be the keynote speaker for this year's valediction ceremony, I was deeply moved, incredibly honored, and eventually slightly confused. I couldn't remember the exact difference between valediction ceremony and final exercises. At a lot of universities did the same thing. I had no recollection of this bifurcated experience. I just had a vague memory of graduation weekend. You're feeling it right now, right? Yeah. So I jumped on the Googles and discovered that the valediction ceremony is meant to be a more intimate ceremony. It's put on by the graduating class, not the university. And it is an opportunity for the class to celebrate their achievements and give thanks to the university, as you all just saw. In other words, this is the cool one. This is the one that's student-led, student self-governance. Thinking about that, I became more honored, truly. A quick explanation for the parents and family friends who aren't acutely aware of the nuances of the university's student self-governance. Thomas Jefferson and all the educators that have followed him understood that the greatest way to learn is to do. So as much as practical, the university lets students take control. Whatever service, sport, club, or activity you believe needs to exist on grounds, it's up to you to create it. If some other student hadn't already created it decades or even centuries ago. The best way to learn is to do. It's just one of the many life lessons I learned or had reaffirmed while here at the university. And then I realized I might be onto something. Maybe I'd stumbled onto a little bit of a theme. See, when you give speeches like this, they expect you to actually have something worth saying. My wife will tell you I rarely have anything worth hearing, but I figured that I needed to up my game today and give you something inspirational, aspirational, at least informative, or maybe just entertaining, I don't know. I needed a theme. And as I sat there having a Google-triggered trip down educational memory lane, I started remembering just how many clear and cogent life lessons I have that centered the University of Virginia. They kind of remind me of this insanely popular self-help book by Robert Fulghum that came out right before I came to college. Now, you all won't know it, but your parents will. It was a collection of simple yet profound life lessons called All I Really Needed to Know, I Learned in Kindergarten. Well, President Ryan, parents, esteemed guests and graduates of the University of Virginia class of 2025, I submit to you now that all I really needed to know, I learned at UVA. It works. It works because two of the most important things in my life I was introduced to here at UVA. I was introduced to the craft of acting, which became my profession, and I was introduced to Vanda Nakana, who became my wife. Yeah. I had my first play in Culver Theater, and I had my first, you get the idea. Look, I'm gonna try and I'm gonna fail. See, she's giving me the eye. She's already mad. I haven't even gotten started yet. I'm gonna try and I'm gonna fail to be concise as I unpack this for you, but essentially there are a handful of concepts and quotes that I learned or gained greater clarity about here at UVA that have continually played a major role in my life. And make no mistake, I have to relearn many of these lessons. And in fact, I'm still working on living some of them, but they have been great guides in my life, and I have faith that you will do better with them than I have. They're in no particular order, but we just hit a great one. The best way to learn is to do. Or as the great philosopher Morpheus once said to Neo, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. But sometimes you don't even know the path. You're just walking in a general direction. That was me, senior year of high school, when someone asked me, where are you applying to college? And I said, yeah, gotta get on that. Well, the stellar reputation of the University of Virginia seemed like the best bet. And when I arrived here first year to move into my new home in Lefevre, I had never, yeah, give it up for Lefevre, I had never been to the university before. All right, I'd maybe seen the rotunda on the cover of the brochure. Suffice it to say, I had absolutely no expectations. And as it turns out, that was a great way to begin. So here at UVA, I learned a great life lesson about how to properly manage expectations. Have expectations about what you will do, not how you will feel about it or how you will benefit from it. I learned that while it's great to set goals, it's problematic to have expectations about what life will be like when you achieve those goals. A goal should be a simple statement of an achievable result that is within your control, verbs and nouns. Expectations become problematic when you get into the adjectives, focusing on the things that are out of your control, how I expect it will feel or what benefits I hope to accrue when I achieve the goals. I want to drop 10 pounds. Goal. So I will be happier and people will find me sexier. Expectation. I want to graduate in 4 years. And when I do, I will feel instantly like an adult, find a job, and my parents will be proud of me. I want to become an actor on a primetime TV show so that I will be rich and famous, everybody will want to be my friend, and life will be easy. Yeah. You know where this is going. The first time I acted professionally on a primetime TV show, it was different. I was making less money than at my previous job, my first job on a daytime soap opera. The schedule was constantly changing to accommodate one of our leads' addiction issues, and I, a classically trained theater actor, was so bored that with the work that I started moonlighting doing a revival of a play that was written by our own Pulitzer Prize-winning former U.S. Poet Laureate Rita Dove. It was extremely fulfilling play, but paid very little. Because Rita was my wife's first mentor as a professional poet, it was the first time my wife ever said to me, "Don't screw this up." I had achieved my goal, but it did not match my expectations at all. And on the relationship between goals and expectations, another quick lesson. Goals are great. Growth is essential. Even when goals aren't met, there's still growth. Failure only occurs when there's no growth at all, when you didn't try. And by definition, if a living thing is not growing, it is dying. Even when you're physically stopped growing, it's mental or spiritual growth that keeps you feeling young and staves off death. Focusing on growth as much as goals is perhaps the best way to manage expectations. And one last thing about expectations. My good friend Troy Stanfield, who I don't think has made it here because I think he was 2 or 3 drinks in at the reception that I saw him at earlier. Troy was a commerce school student and my co-chair of resident staff in charge of all the new dorms while I had all the old dorms, the best dorms. I don't want to start the fight, we'll leave it at that. Troy taught me a fundamental life lesson about a fundamental rule of management. You should have expectation meetings with the people you work with. Be very clear and upfront about what is expected of your staff, your peers, and even your supervisors. Clarity about how you and when you want communication, clarity about goals and boundaries. But life at UVA also taught me that we should have the same expectation meetings with our friends. Literally ask, what kind of friends are we? Are we party friends? Are we confidants? Are you my ride and die friend? A friend who will back my play 100% no matter how idiotic, riding shotgun with me as we pull a Thelma and Louise and drive off a cliff? Or are you my ride or die friend? A friend who will always remind me that there is a choice between the two and help me make better choices, help me be my better self. UVA taught me to clearly manage expectations for myself, my friends, and the people I work with. But even if I had the highest expectations coming to UVA, they would have been surpassed within the first week. My first week here was legend. Virginia football beat Clemson for the first time in 29 years. Yeah, it ended what had become known simply as the streak. Every Wahoo that ever Wahooed lost their damn mind. We rushed the field, we tore down the goalposts, beer flowed like a river down Rugby Road. Even alumni were streaking the lawn. But not me. Not me, not yet. I didn't streak the lawn until a couple years later when most of the theater department streaked the lawn with dozens of clowns that had come to the university for an event. If you thought your time streaking the lawn was memorable, try doing it with a bunch of clowns speaking in foreign languages or with some mimes who didn't speak at all. And remember, nobody's wearing clothes, just white pancake makeup and red noses. The week we beat Clemson, the week we streaked with the clowns, are two perfect examples of another life lesson I learned here at UVA. Now, this lesson is best encapsulated by a quote from Mr. Jefferson's fellow founding father, Benjamin Franklin. Ben, I get to call him Ben, Ben said, "Moderation in all things, including moderation." Think about that for a second. Write that one down. It's been a touchstone in my life. Moderation in all things, including moderation. Be balanced most of the time, but also know when to tread very lightly or when to go hard. Balanced is when you know you can swing by the party, but still make it to class the next day. Going hard is skipping class because you need to recover. Some of you are having memories right now. Didn't happen, parents. Didn't happen. A perhaps more worthwhile version is skipping class to share a rare experience with a dear friend or a future wife. Or the completely opposite direction would be going to extra discussion sections of a class, then sequestering yourself in the Stax library so you can ace that exam or finish that paper. Moderation in all things, including moderation, means knowing how to be responsibly irresponsible. And I have every faith that you've all mastered the social version of that. But unless the student body has demurred and become less outspoken, I'm also confident that some of you have dabbled in the civic version of being responsibly irresponsible. Knowing most of the time you should be a responsible, moderate citizen, following the rules, but also knowing that there are times when it is your civic responsibility to break the rules, to get into what the legendary Congressman John Lewis called good trouble. But remember, I said responsible. You don't harm anyone, you don't destroy property, and most important, you take full responsibility for your actions and accept the consequences. Mr. Jefferson and the Founding Fathers were more than prepared to accept the consequences for their fight for freedom. They pretty much expected to die. But then better, more effective nonviolent methods of protest were introduced, but Gandhi still had to accept that his hunger strike would damage his body, and Martin Luther King willingly did his time in jail. Done properly, advocacy and protest can become lasting legacies of service to your fellow citizens. Which brings me to the concept of service, our next life lesson, and one of my all-time favorite quotes. Now, this one comes from Joaquin Miller, and it was taught to me by some dear friends here at the university. All you can hold in your cold, dead hand is what you have given away. Powerful in its simplicity, this quote improves on other colloquialisms like, you can't take it with you, by not just reminding us that money is meant to be spent, but reminding us what to spend money on. Spending money to acquire things may feel good, but giving to others in need always feels better, and a life of service is what creates legacy. And it comes back to you tenfold in different ways. Sometimes it's a public recognition, like a room on the lawn. I got any lawnies in the house? Right? And sometimes your service brings compensation. Where my RA's at? Where's my staff at? Yeah, sitting right next to the Lonnie. See that? See what happens? I wanted to serve the community at this university, and I needed to pay for college, so I became a resident assistant. And as a result, I never left first-year housing. I worked my way up to being the co-chair of resident staff, working closely with two of my favorite mentors, Deans Angela Davis, not that one, if you're a historian, but also Pat Lampkin. And I give it up for Pat Lampkin. I cannot tell you how much I learned from those ladies. Mentors are half the point of college. So much is outside of the classroom, and they were the ones who taught it to me. I may have become an RA for financial assistance, but I quickly realized I got so much more out of it. Helping shepherd others to the beginning of their university journey, helping them transition into adulthood was one of the most profound experiences of my life, even today. And by the way, Lonnies, the view of the lawn, I know it's fantastic, but my co-chair suite had private bathroom, separate living room, kitchen, just saying. If Citizen Kane taught us anything, it's that no one on their deathbed talks about how much money they made. You talk about the friends you made and the people you loved. You talk about the experience you had, and after you've passed, the people you helped will talk about you. Service to others is one of the best habits you could develop here at Virginia, a wonderful addiction that I hope you carry forward through the rest of your life, and will give you the highest of highs with no negative side effects. And now we've come to what is perhaps my North Star of UVA life lessons. It's a quote attributed to John A. Shedd, but taught to me by that same group of very special friends. Now, this life lesson also has two footnotes that I will explain later, but the quote itself is beautiful. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for. All right, Virginia has been your home for the last 4 years or so. You feel safe here, but the university hasn't been preparing you to be safe. You didn't invest all of your energy and money, parents, money? Yeah. Blood, sweat, and tears to be safe. Risk is a part of life, and risk tolerance is a skill that we UVA alumni typically have in spades. Some of you may have even been like me and started taking risks before graduation because, as was mentioned earlier, when I came to the university, I planned on attending law school. My mentor was Justice Leroy Hassell, the youngest and only the second Black Supreme Court Justice of Virginia. The plan was for me to get good grades, get a recommendation from him, go to UVA Law, and then I would come to clerk for him and be a made man in the state of Virginia. And then I took an acting class. And then I did a play. And soon my passion for acting superseded my desire to be my generation's Thurgood Marshall. Sometimes the best risk to take is to try something completely different than what you had planned to do. Be around people who are not like you. Acting was not on my bingo card back then. Even after I fell in love with acting, I wasn't sure I wanted to do it for a living. See, acting is a hard business to get started in. Instability is a constant, and talent guarantees you nothing. Luck plays a role in the career of every actor you can name or even recognize. So when I made the decision to get a Master of Fine Arts in acting instead of a law degree, I literally had to look myself in the mirror daily to remind myself a ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for. So I set sail for graduate school in Philadelphia with plans to go to New York and Broadway after that, but a crazy gust of wind in the form of a talent competition held by producer Aaron Spelling blew me onto the beach of Los Angeles. Literally, I played a lifeguard on the first show. I booked the contest. So, look, man plans and God laughs. Some of you are planning to leave here to make massive sweeping changes all over the world. Some of you are planning to leave here to make a focused, deep impact in a specific part of the world. Some of you are planning to leave here to make changes in yourself, and some of you aren't planning to leave here at all, choosing instead to further your education and deepen your skill set in graduate school. Whatever you do, I want you to approach it with the energy befitting a Virginia alum. Go hard, unless it requires a delicate touch. Moderation in all things, right? But know that this is likely not the last time you will find yourself, that you'll find your metaphorical ship docked in a harbor for safety. Careers switch, positions become unfulfilling. Folks go back to school, families derail the best laid plans, and yes, people get fired from jobs. But assuming you survive whatever craziness awaits you, and you will, you do well to remember the first footnote I discovered to the quote about ships safely in harbor. And that bonus nautical-themed lesson, my friends, is this: life is course correction. I'm not much of a sailor, but anyone who grew up near the ocean, I'm from Virginia Beach. My dad's a sailor who's in the Navy. Anyone who's ever grown up near the ocean can tell you that you can't just set course, fix the wheel, and then daydream. Reaching your destination, reaching your goals requires navigational focus, determination, and constant adjustments to maintain course as the world throws elements at you. Winds blowing you off course, waves battering you around, and you're never going to get through life without some thunderstorms. And sometimes, either because you're knocked way off course or you lose the North Star that guides you, you might find yourself adrift, lost, or ending up at a completely different destination altogether. I mean, Columbus was looking for India, right? Life is course correction. 3 years and an award nomination into that first show, I had learned just about all I thought I could learn from that show and decided to set sail again to look for new work and new challenges. So it was pilot season, which is when the networks cast the shows that are competing for a spot on air. And I was testing, which is the final audition, for 2 different shows. One of them was produced by Aaron Spelling, my boss from that first job, and as a result, it was very intimate. It was just the director, the writer, and me. They only had me audition one time, and I didn't see anybody else waiting to audition before or after me. The job was mine to lose. Now with the other show, it was my 3rd or 4th audition, and the previous audition had about 6 actors and about 20 executives watching. This latest audition only had me and 1 other actor, but still had over 30 executives watching. This project was a hot property with an in-demand writer, and the role was to play an emotionally complex version of Lenny Kravitz, hence the hair. The role for the other show was to play the black best friend, where my primary job was to ask the lead about his love life and other exploits. And when I finished that show's audition, I felt reasonably good about it, but I was still surprised when I didn't even make it home before I got the call that I had booked the job, booked my first primetime TV show. But I was more excited about the other job. It provided a greater challenge for me, and in success, had a much better chance of advancing my career. And did I mention that it was to play a surprisingly sensitive rock star? So I'm on the phone, job offer in hand, but with the rock gods audition the next day, I knew I wouldn't have an answer about the rock audition for a week or so. But after that audition, the next day, I knew that I would at least have a feeling of whether or not I gave a good performance and was in the running. So I asked the show that was offering me to my first primetime gig if I could have 24 hours. And they said no. No. Here's a few things you need to know about the word no. You're gonna hear it a lot in your life. No is the default answer to almost any question, even if basic logic says the answer should be yes, because no means that person doesn't have to learn a new way of doing things. They don't have to do any more work. No means that they're not giving up negotiating leverage, even if it really costs them nothing. No is almost always a less risky proposition for them than giving you a yes. And this is where the second footnote to our nautical safety quote comes into play. For reasons that will become obvious in a moment, my wife rolls her eyes and shakes her head whenever I say these words. It is better to ask forgiveness than permission. Love you, baby. If no one is going to be directly harmed, if you can handle getting way out over your skis, sometimes it is best to ignore the no. So I sat there in my driveway, looked myself in the rearview mirror, and muttered, a ship in harbor, blah, 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 blah. And then I politely declined the offer to do my first primetime TV show. I went inside, had dinner, got some sleep, and gave a great audition the next day. Didn't get the job. Yeah, they went with the other guy. Immediately called back the first show and said, hey, what's up? Turns out I am available. And a month later, when I walked into the table read and met the other cast members, the president of the production company walked right up to me and said, dude, you gave us a heart attack. And then he gave me a hug. Sometimes no's aren't no's as much as they are a test, even unintentionally. See, I was emotionally involved, had nothing to lose, and armed with my quote. That's why I stood firm. But for him, it was all just business and establishing dominance. But in the end, he respected me more. He knew that I was trying to determine my own course. I was captain of my ship. Now, this next lesson I want to talk about is the only one that came in the form of a contract. Does anybody here remember signing the honor pledge? Yeah, I'm sure it's been a conversation here. Parents and friends, you probably have heard about the legendary honor code here at the University of Virginia. Every student signs a pledge declaring that they will not, say it with me now, lie, cheat, or steal. That was really lackluster, y'all know it. If a student is caught lying, cheating, or stealing, they will be expelled from the university. At least that was the case back when I was a student here. We had the single sanction rule, and it was no joke. There are stories of people who had graduated and been working for years when it was discovered that they broke the honor code and the university revoked their degrees. Had us shook. But this generation of students, you all, voted to change the single sanction of the honor system that has been in place for 180 years, to change it so that expulsion wasn't the only consequence. Almost a quarter of students voted, and something like 80% of those that voted to make the change. You voted. The question for each of you individually is, did you vote for the change to make the honor system less about punishment and more about rehabilitation? Or did you vote to change the honor system so you could get away with stuff without suffering the academic equivalent of the death penalty? Now, I know y'all had some knockdown, drag-out debates about it. And for those that don't know, Wahoos are legendary for debating issues, especially when alcohol is involved. But it's usually debate with a purpose, debating to solve a problem, not debating to tear someone else down or to score wins for your own ego. So I know that these debates around the honor system had to be amazing. But however you feel about the change to the honor system, you have to appreciate the thinking behind it. At its best, a move towards rehabilitation, it reinforces the idea that dishonor need not be a permanent state. You can regain your honor. Ideas can be perfect, but people are always flawed. Ideally, the new honor system acknowledges the fact that people make mistakes, and it sets a path for them to atone for those mistakes. People do make mistakes, and by extension, so do groups of people, like institutions. Even entire societies make mistakes and dishonor themselves. We have to create a system by which they can atone for their mistakes and regain their honor. The obvious and simple first step, just like AA, admit what you did. Own it. Where are my law students at? Any law students here? Pre-law? Anybody going into law school? Right here. In the legal system, we call this allocution, right? It's where someone publicly admits to what they did and expresses a desire to work towards some kind of restitution. And once again, UVA gives us a shining example of this. In fact, it happened right about the time that you all got here, maybe just before. The university opened the memorial to enslaved laborers who built and worked at the university. And when I first saw it, I wasn't ready for how emotional it made me. Look, I don't think I can underscore enough how much it means for a person of color to have an institution they love and want to truly admire, take ownership of the mistakes of the past. I don't think I've ever been more proud of UVA than when I saw that memorial. And if you don't fully get it, here's the analogy. The analogy would be having a parent that you love, but with whom you have a strained and turbulent relationship, finally come to you and say, I'm sorry. That's honorable. That's how you begin to atone. And yes, parents, I am kind of looking at you, but maybe use this weekend as the opportunity to say the things that feel too awkward to say in other situations. But I'm also talking to you two graduates. I'm sure you've all had debates with your parents that have gotten a little out of hand. And come to think of it, some of you are probably second and third generation Wahoos. You may have been debating about the honor code. But listen, about the honor code, I gotta tell you, I don't really have a dog in that fight. I'm not terribly interested in the debate about what the punishments of the honor system should be. I am interested in understanding what honor is. And therein lies the life lesson that because of your debates, your generation of Wahoos may understand better than any other. To understand honor is to understand yourself. And pro tip, it's about so much more than lying, cheating, or stealing. The honor system is, in fact, a great way to ensure that people don't lie, cheat, or steal, but I'm not so sure it's the best way to get people to understand what capital H honor is. The problem with teaching people to understand honor by focusing on lying, cheating, and stealing is that it almost by definition, it only becomes relevant if someone catches you. It makes us focus on the external. It becomes about how other people will perceive you, how other people will lose trust and faith in you if they catch you lying, cheating, or stealing. But when we focus inward on the internal ramifications, things become much more clear. Here's your litmus test. Are you the kind of person who would cheat at solitaire? Sounds silly, but these people do exist. Nobody's checking to see how you did at solitaire. Nobody's even earned major street cred for being the one who developed the perfect system to win or cheat at solitaire. You're literally only cheating yourself. It's called solitaire, people. Litmus test number 2. If you could, would you want the weights in your gym to be intentionally mislabeled? All the 10-pound weights are actually 5 pounds. The 20-pound weights are actually 10 pounds, and so on. I mean, trust me, look, I know guys in Hollywood who are padding the bench press numbers. They're probably padding other things too, but you know the people I'm talking about. But they're padding those bench press numbers they tell to other people. It's bad enough when you lie to other people, but never lie to yourself. That is where dishonor truly begins. Look, I get it. We live in a world of shortcuts today. Social media, influencers passing as experts, likes and follows passing as expertise, artificial intelligence doing the heavy lifting, writing and thinking. Look, if we had ChatGPT back in my day, I know a couple guys who had like 6.0 GPAs. People want the money and the fame and the higher education degrees without all the pesky work and struggle that actually comes with it. So here's another life lesson for you. College degrees are evidence of intelligence and skill. You are the proof. Side note, today is pretty much the last day that anybody's ever gonna care what your GPA is. Sorry, I mean, your parents were afraid to tell you because they're proud of you, but your actual number for your GPA, magna cum laude, summa cum laude, nobody cares. Maybe for your first job, but that's pretty much it. After that, only the valedictorian gets to whip out their GPA's title, not the actual number. Nobody cares about the number. Bragging about GPAs isn't the point, though. You know the work you put in. You know the knowledge you've gained and how much you've grown. You know the excellent work ethic you've developed. Out on the street, nobody can see if you're a black belt martial artist or a yellow belt. But better believe that the black belt walks differently. Believe that the confidence that comes from genuinely putting in the work gives you a different kind of swagger. And you don't care what the world knows or doesn't know about how proficient you are. Mess around and find out. So yes, generally speaking, the world only cares that you've achieved the goal of earning a higher degree. But the more rigorous the college is known to be, the better your degree represents you. And when you graduate from the University of Virginia, when you have lived by the honor code, people trust that your degree, expertise, and skills are real and quantifiable. They believe this not because of your GPA, not because you signed a pledge on a piece of paper, not simply because nobody caught you cheating. No, they believe this because a UVA graduate, especially one of the class of 2025, has put in the work to understand what honor truly is. They put in the work. And they would never cheat themselves of the opportunity to grow. They would never lie to themselves about what they've accomplished. Look, I'm a Navy brat who grew up in the shadow of the largest naval base in the world. It felt like everybody I knew was in or connected to the Navy. My three best friends, Naval Academy, Virginia Military Institute, and the Marines. I grew up with military people who talked about honor like it was a real thing that you could touch, as real as the seat you're sitting on. And then I came to a university that made me sign a pledge declaring that I would conduct myself with honor. So believe me when I tell you that I have put a lot of thought into what honor is. Not even gonna pretend like I have all the answers, but I do have some thoughts. Honor is a pseudonym for goodness, trustworthiness. You had honor before you ever came to UVA, and graduates, I pray you will have it after you leave. Honor is placed within you by your Creator. Nobody can take your honor, but you can give it away. People may disrespect you, but only you can dishonor yourself. You can do it in big ways, lying, cheating, or stealing, or you can do it in little ways, not speaking up when you see somebody else lying, cheating, or stealing, seeing a person in need and doing nothing to help. Losing empathy, being mean, punching down. Honor often suffers and dies from 1,000 tiny cuts. But I submit to you that many of today's societal ills stem from the fact that too many people either A, think honor is a silly, antiquated concept, or B, they believe dishonor only comes if and when you get caught. My genuine prayer is that as members of the UVA class of 2025, the class that wrestled with the concept of honor to change the system, I pray you go out into society and prove them wrong. Honor lives inside each and every one of us, inside of you. Honor is real and perhaps needed more today than ever before. I see the honor in each and every one of you. And I look forward to seeing what wonderful things you do when your ship sets sail. Bon voyage.